I recognized that my capacity for focus was significantly compromised, but in all honesty, it likely wouldn't have changed the outcome. I found myself idling behind a blue Chrysler at the intersection, my mind a maelstrom of chaotic thoughts. My driving was almost entirely autopilot. When the light switched to green, I trailed the Chrysler across the junction. At least I began to. From the periphery of my vision, I caught sight of something. From that moment, my reality fractured into an endless cascade of dreams, nightmares, and hallucinations, accompanied by relentless pain and profound misery. I have vague recollections of my family, I believe. I remember people speaking to me. It was peculiar. Each word was clear, but collectively they were gibberish. Just disjointed words devoid of meaning. My consciousness felt fragmented, as if I was perpetually leaping between dreams or nightmares. I never had a sense of being truly awake or clear-headed. Over time, a fragment of my psyche recognized the illusory nature of my current existence. This realization didn't eradicate the pain or the nightmares, but it did slightly alleviate the pervasive misery. I opened my eyes and immediately noticed a difference. I could see walls and a ceiling. A voice nearby spoke coherently, and I focused on listening. I mentally checked my body. I could wiggle my toes. Good. Then my fingers. They worked too. The pain was a dull, constant ache, but it was bearable compared to what I had been enduring. I tried to turn my head, but the pain flared, and I must have groaned. "Mr. Mitchell, you're awake," a young woman exclaimed as she leaned close and smiled. "I'll get the doctor. Just rest. I'll be right back." I think I drifted back to sleep. When I woke again, a man younger than me was examining my eyes and head. "Welcome back, Mr. Mitchell. You've been through quite an ordeal, but you're doing fine now. You were in a car accident, and it was touch and go for a while, but it looks like you're out of the woods. I know you have a lot of questions, but you need to sleep and heal. We've given you something for the pain and to help you rest. Don't worry, you'll see your family very soon." I closed my eyes for a moment, and when I opened them, I realized I must have slept for hours. Luke and Sarah were standing next to the bed on my left, smiling as I took in my surroundings. "Oh, Dad," Sarah cried. "We've been so worried about you. I knew you were tough, and you pull through. I love you so much, Dad." "Yeah, Dad, you're too stubborn to die," Luke laughed. "You've got years ahead of you. I guess you have Mom to thank for that." I tried to respond, but my mouth felt like it was full of sand. I couldn't even part my lips. Forming words was impossible, so I attempted a smile, though it hurt a little. "That's right, Dad. Mom gave you a gift that keeps on giving. She gave you a kidney. I guess you two are joined at the hip now," Sarah laughed. "Look the other way. Mom's right over there." With some effort, I turned my head and saw a bed next to mine. It took a moment for my eyes to focus. Finally, I saw Stacy sitting up, smiling at me with tears streaming down her cheeks. Was this real or another nightmare? What were they saying about a kidney? Why would I need one? Why would Stacy give me one? It was too much to comprehend. I closed my eyes again. I spent most of the next few days sleeping. During my brief moments of lucidity, nurses, doctors, and my kids filled me in on what had happened. Gradually, I began to separate reality from the dreams. Whatever they were giving me was some serious stuff. A kid fleeing the cops had T-boned me on the driver's side. Trying to avoid a ticket for doing 35 in a 25 mph zone, he nearly cost me my life. The police estimated he was going around 50 when he hit me. I couldn't help but think the exact speed didn't matter. The outcome was what counted. The kid walked away unharmed, and his father had him released into his custody. I played football in high school and thought I was a pretty good wide receiver. I was fast and could catch anything I could touch. When I went to Penn State, I tried out for the team, even though I didn't have a scholarship, which should have clued me in on how the coaches saw my talent. During tryouts, everyone was pushing hard to show their abilities and commitment. In our first full contact drills, I made my cut and saw the ball heading my way. It was about 3 feet over my head, so I leaped up and caught it with my right hand. I felt sure the coaches would be impressed. What I hadn't anticipated was the sheer speed and power of the guys trying to make the defensive team. Before I could bring the ball down and tuck it in, a 245-pound linebacker slammed into me. He was going full speed when he lowered his shoulder and hit my right side. I folded around him like a pretzel as he drove me into the synthetic turf of the practice field. I woke up in the hospital, pissing blood for a week, with doctors looking worried for the first few days. By the end of the week, they let me go, but my right kidney was pretty much destroyed. I was warned to always be careful and take good care of my left one, which would manage all renal functions just fine, as long as I avoided doing anything stupid, like playing football or getting T-boned in the driver's side. Here's where things started to get interesting. Although my injuries from the accident weren't as severe as you might expect, my left kidney was a lost cause. Naturally, the best course of action was to find a donor quickly for a transplant. Stacy got tested, even though the odds of a match were slim. But guess what? As I floated in and out of consciousness, it was decided that Stacy would donate her kidney to me. They informed me that I had given my consent to the procedure, though I had no memory of agreeing to anything. While Stacy bounced back quite quickly, having not received a foreign organ, my recovery was slower and more closely monitored for any signs of rejection. As she regained her strength, Stacy was a constant presence by my side, reading me the news, wiping my brow, and even helping me to the bathroom. It was a difficult period, but eventually I was allowed to go home. I spent another 6 weeks resting before I could return to work. During this time, Stacy was incredibly attentive and understanding, always trying to stay cheerful. Our kids, who were away at college, came home most weekends to help out and check in on me. Stacy made a full recovery in what seemed like no time. She was back at work within a couple of weeks, leaving me to gradually regain my strength at home alone. About 2 weeks after Stacy returned to work, I was finally able to walk around the block, which felt like a significant milestone. By the time I went back to work, I was much more mobile. The doctors said it would take months to be completely back to normal, but assured me that day would come. When I returned to work, I was initially put on light duty. I soon asked my supervisor to let me resume my regular tasks. I work for the phone company, operating bucket trucks to check lines and poles. It's a job I'm good at and enjoy. The following week, I was back doing what I loved, which significantly boosted my spirits. Driving made me a bit nervous for several months, and I found myself extra cautious at intersections, fully aware of how fortunate I had been to be in a sturdy company truck when a kid crashed into me with his dad's SUV. In a regular car, it would have been a different story. 6 months after the accident, life had mostly returned to normal, except for one major change. Stacy and I hadn't made love since the incident. It wasn't due to her lack of enthusiasm. She was willing and sometimes even insistent, but I just couldn't muster the interest. I was grappling with some major issues. On the day of my accident, I was working near the interstate, focused on cleaning up a mess caused by an excavator that had torn down a line. I was tasked with this job because of my prior experience and expertise. As I worked, perched in the boom, I glanced over the top of a nearby parked dump truck. Beyond it was a motel catering to travelers on Route 80. I noticed a car that looked remarkably similar to Stacy's pull-in and park just 50 feet away. It's peculiar, but we seem almost invisible while working in those buckets. Another car soon pulled in, and the driver stepped out. It was Steve Taylor, a coworker of Stacy's. He walked around to the front of his Honda, and a woman emerged from the other car to meet him with a slow, intense kiss. That woman was no stranger. She was my wife. In stunned silence, I watched them walk hand in hand to room 108. Steve swiped a key card, and they disappeared inside. Before Stacy could draw the curtains, I saw Steve groping through her clothes. A wave of unease washed over me as I contemplated my situation. Stacy had never been particularly attractive to me. She always dressed well, but intimacy seldom occurred unless I initiated it, and even then, it wasn't always successful. I had come to accept her lukewarm interest, finding solace in her qualities as a mother and what I believed was a good wife. At least, I used to think so. Realizing that Steve was her lover made me reassess her standing as a spouse. Accepting this revelation was not an option. I knew that rushing to the motel and demanding answers wouldn't solve anything. It was too late to avoid being a cuckold. I understood that this wasn't their first encounter. They were far too familiar with each other for that. As I reflected on the situation, it slowly dawned on me that there was only one viable solution, aside from contemplating something extreme. Revenge wasn't on my mind. I was simply a man in agony, yearning to retreat and nurse my wounds in solitude. Hurting Stacy never crossed my mind. I was also acutely aware that our marriage was beyond repair. I wasn't the most attractive guy, nor did I have the highest earnings. Others excelled in ways I didn't. If those factors mattered to Stacy, she should have chosen someone else 23 years ago. While I wasn't exceptional, I did possess some pride and self-respect. Losing Stacy would leave me with almost nothing of importance, but remaining a cuckold would strip me of even that. The choice seemed clear. Then, as fate would have it, that wretched kid decided to flee from the cops. Stacy had given me one of her kidneys, a fact I hadn't fully processed. The accident complicated everything. I found myself unable to think clearly, just as confused as when I first learned about Stacy's donation. I never asked for it, and it didn't seem fair. It might have been simpler if they had let me die. Now I was left to figure out how to live the life my mostly unfaithful, cheating wife had saved. "I think you should see a doctor, James," Stacy told me one night as we lay in bed. She was hitting on me, and once again, I resisted it. "I've spent the last 6 months visiting doctors, Stacy," I replied. "I'm really not interested in seeing any more. I'm almost completely healed anyway." "I was thinking more about a psychiatrist," she suggested. "You have to admit you haven't been the same since the accident, and I'm worried about you. It could be a mental issue a doctor can help with." Truthfully, I had been contemplating the same thing. Maybe a therapist could help me figure out how to get my life back on track and deal with Stacy's infidelity. "Okay, Stacy, if you make the arrangements, I'll go," I said calmly. "Maybe it's a good idea." "Really? I didn't think you'd agree so easily, James. I actually had a whole speech prepared to convince you," Stacy admitted. "Can you tell me why you accepted my suggestion so quickly, if you don't mind me asking?" "Sure, you can ask," I responded as I turned away from her. "It's because I'm in deep trouble. Good night." Tuesday after work found me in Dr. Clark's office. She was a reasonably attractive woman around my age, dressed neatly but conservatively. She looked the part of a professional psychiatrist. "I suppose if you have any children, their names aren't wrong," I remarked as we shook hands. "What makes you say that, Mr. Mitchell?" she inquired. "I've always heard that 2 Clarks don't make a wrong, doctor," I replied with a straight face. Her eyes sparkled as she tried to keep a straight face herself. Eventually, she broke into a wide smile. "I'm supposed to make you feel relaxed and comfortable, Mr. Mitchell," she laughed, "not the other way around." After the initial small talk, we agreed she would call me James, and I would call her Doctor. "James," she began, looking at her notes, "I see your wife made this appointment. She mentioned to my receptionist that you had a serious accident about 6 months ago, and she, in fact, donated a kidney to you. She also noted that while your physical recovery seems to be progressing well, there's been one issue. You've lost all interest in intimacy. Is that accurate, James?" "Tell you what, Doc. Strip down and hop on this couch, then we'll see just how interested I am," I snapped, my irritation evident. The fact that Stacy had spilled so much to the receptionist and pinned all the blame on me was infuriating. She might as well have taken out a newspaper ad and been more discreet. Dr. Clark scrutinized me, assessing my mood. "Are you saying you're still interested in intimacy, James?" she asked. "I'll have to decline your invitation for obvious reasons, which I'm sure you're aware of. But why does your wife think you've lost interest when you believe you haven't?" "Maybe it has something to do with her being unfaithful," I replied flatly. "I just can't muster attraction for a cheating woman who seems to be catering to half the town. Does that make me sick or crazy?" "We don't use those terms, James. Why do you think your wife is unfaithful? She must have some concerns about you to have scheduled this appointment, wouldn't you agree?" "Finally, we're getting to the point. That's the crux of it. She's been incredibly good to me. She even donated a kidney to save my life. Pardon my language, Doc, but you can see why I'm conflicted, right? I questioned her. You're saying your wife is unfaithful, yet she is willing to make huge sacrifices for you. Is that what you mean, James? The doctor probed. Exactly, Doc, I confirmed. She's involved with a coworker. I caught them together on the day of my accident. I was ready to throw her out, but then I got derailed, literally, by some kid in his dad's SUV. So, you're convinced your wife is having an affair, and that's why you've lost interest in intimacy. Could these suspicions be related to the trauma from your accident? Is it possible you misinterpreted what you saw? She inquired. Imagine you saw your spouse meet someone at a seedy motel, kiss them passionately, walk hand in hand into room 108, then see them groping each other as the drapes closed. You wait over an hour, and when they finally emerge, they kiss again before driving off. Would you think they were having an intense game of Scrabble, or would you assume something else? I demanded. Dr. Clark looked unsettled by my account, but quickly regained her composure. Have you talked to your wife about this? Does she know what you saw, and has she had a chance to explain? You need to discuss it if you're ever going to move past this, James, she stated firmly. That's the issue, Doc. It's not easy for me to bring up, I admitted. And on top of that, she needs to confess and beg for forgiveness if our marriage is to have any chance. She has to give me reasons, how many times they've met, the duration of the affair, how many men she's been with since we got married. She needs to convince me that she's stopped and will never do it again. If I have to force a confession, it's not worth a pinch of pig shit. I said, convince me, Doc, I quickly added. That's much harder than simply telling me. I have to genuinely believe her, and honestly, I doubt she can do it, even if she tries. It sounds like you've given this some thought, James, Dr. Clark responded. What do you hope to gain by coming to me? I need you to tell me if I'm justified in feeling betrayed. Am I wrong for not wanting to be intimate with a woman who's cheating on me? Am I wrong to give her a chance to explain? How long should I wait before kicking her out? Will I feel depressed or guilty if I divorce her given she donated a kidney to save me? Should I accept being a cuckold and let her have lovers? If I can't even look in the mirror, how can I keep going? I demanded. How can I make sense of my life? The answers to these questions are within you, James. I can't tell you. You probably know that. But you need to resolve this conflict or it will destroy both you and your marriage. We need to meet weekly to work toward a solution, she advised. Sure, Doc. My insurance covers this. You'll maintain professional confidentiality, right? I asked. My wife will be asking you what's wrong with me. Of course I will, James, she replied. I think it would also be helpful if your wife saw me separately. This is rarely a problem created or resolved by one partner alone. Well, that's up to her, Doc. Maybe she could take some time to see her lover, especially if it means her husband will stick around to pay the bills and occasionally have fun in bed. But let me tell you this, Doc, I added. If you even hint to Stacy that I know she's cheating, the marriage is over. I'll make sure your payment is withheld, and I'll report you to the board. You'll be waiting tables the next time I see you. James, do you think you frighten me? The shrink asked confidently. Not really, Doc, but you needed to know how I feel about this. If you can't give me answers, you sure as hell can't tell her. I only saw Dr. Clark a few more times. It seemed like we always reached the same impasse, and then everything stalled. She never gave me specific advice, and I never told Stacy I didn't like her cheating. If you have to spell that out to your wife, there's no point in keeping her around. One evening, about a week after I stopped seeing Dr. Clark, I was enjoying a shower, letting the warm water run down my scars. My mind wandered to the good doctor, and I couldn't help but imagine having her on my couch. Let me join you, James, Stacy's whisper startled me from behind. I nearly slipped in surprise. Turning around, I saw her in the shower. I hadn't heard her come in, and it had been years since she last joined me in there. I stepped out of the shower and wrapped a towel around my waist. Why are you being so cold to me, James? Stacy demanded. I thought you'd get over this problem after seeing the psychiatrist, but you've only gotten worse. What are you talking about, Stacy? You're the one who's been different. When was the last time you were in the shower with me? When, before the accident, did you try to initiate intimacy? You never did. You always acted like you preferred being alone, I countered. How can you say that, James? Stacy asked. I've never denied you intimacy. That's nonsense, and you know it. There were countless nights you were too tired, had an upset stomach, or the ever-popular headache, I replied. Just tell me why you suddenly want it, and why am I the villain for not feeling the same way? Did I ever make you feel guilty when you turned me down so many times? I wouldn't say I turned you down cold, James. I was just tired or stressed. I didn't realize how much it meant to you at the time. You should have told me, Stacy reasoned. If I had known it meant that much to you, I would have been more than happy to let you make love to me. Eureka! I nearly exclaimed. You make it sound like I'm privileged to make love to you, as if it's a burden for you and an honor for me. How on earth is that supposed to make me eager to jump at the chance, Stacy? I wasn't about to beg for it out of pity then, and I'm certainly not going to now. Intimacy used to be something we both wanted, but over the past few years, you've obliterated that idea. Why is it suddenly so important to you now, Stacy? Explain that to me. I just want to feel loved, James. You've been through so much pain, and I was terrified I might never hold you again, Stacy said tearfully. I think about the wonderful husband and father you've been all these years. The thought of losing you frightened me deeply. I want to love you and be loved by you, to show and feel how much you mean to me. So nearly losing me gave you some grand revelation, and now you want to make love every day to compensate for ignoring me for the last 5 years or so. Is that it? I demanded. I didn't ignore you, James. I just wasn't as affectionate and caring as I now see I should have been. I vowed to myself that if you survived, I would make it right, Stacy sobbed. I didn't realize you'd be so resistant. You used to always desire intimacy. What changed to make you so distant, James? Why are you like this? Does being intimate with someone prove you love them, Stacy? I quietly asked, is that what you believe? If we are intimate, will it show that we love each other? Is physical closeness the same as love, Stacy? Do you think that intimacy automatically translates to love? If I slept with you, would that mean we love each other? No, James. Simply doing it doesn't prove anything. I want you to love me and make love to me. We've been husband and wife for almost 24 years. A husband makes love to his wife. He doesn't just sleep with her, Stacy replied. You know that. I'm a bit puzzled, Stacy. If a husband makes love to his wife, then who just sleeps with her? What's a wife to do if she simply wants a good old-fashioned fling? Whom should she turn to then? I pressed. Stacy burst into tears and dashed into our bedroom. Oddly enough, I felt a sense of relief wash over me, perhaps because I'd finally confronted her with some hard questions and let her come to her own realizations. One thing was crystal clear. I wouldn't settle for Steve Taylor's cast-offs and leftovers. Why on earth would any woman think her husband would accept playing second fiddle? Sure, a guy might not mind being the sidekick for a woman married to another man. Free intimacy, no commitments, no hassles. It's entertainment, emotionally and financially funded by some other poor sap. But I was done footing that bill. I headed straight to the spare bedroom, tossed the towel from my waist, and slipped under the sheets. I was out cold within minutes. In the early morning, I woke to find Stacy's body nestled next to mine, her arms encircling me. I briefly wondered about her sudden affection before sleep reclaimed me. When I next woke, daylight was streaming in. It was almost time to start the day. Stacy was already awake, watching me intently. James, I'm deeply sorry for not being the understanding and loving wife you need and deserve, she began. I realize now how selfish and cold I've been. I truly want to make amends and be a better wife and lover from now on. Can you give me that chance? Stacy, it's not that straightforward, I replied. I have one of your kidneys inside me, and I'm genuinely grateful for that sacrifice. But I have to ask, why did you do it, Stacy? I'm still trying to understand. James, I did it because you're my husband. I love you and wanted to help you. I knew you would do anything for me. That's the kind of man you are. She seemed taken aback by my question. How could you even ask such a thing? Now I'm in your debt, Stacy. It's like this looming shadow over me. Was it love or something else that drove you to do it? I asked gently. It was love and guilt, James, Stacy sobbed, tears streaming down her face. I feel so awful. You have no idea how painful things have been since that day. James, I had an affair. I'm deeply ashamed. I dated a guy and slept with him 4 times. The last time was the same day you had the accident. Stacy broke down, crying uncontrollably. While my heart ached for her, I couldn't bring myself to offer comfort. After a few minutes, she managed to regain some composure and continued her confession. I'm racked with guilt, James. You've always been a wonderful, understanding husband and a gentle lover. I never knew there was any other kind until I got tangled up with that other guy. He was rough and demanding. I thought I could change him, make him gentle, but I soon realized he just wanted to use me. He didn't care how I felt or what I wanted. We argued every time we were together. He called me names, told me I was a frigid bitch because I wouldn't do what he wanted. James, I realized I should do those things with you, for you, not some jerk who saw me as a piece of meat, Stacy sobbed gently. I remained stoic as my wife of 23 years confessed her infidelity. Just hearing her admit how poorly she had treated me made me feel a bit better. I waited for her to continue. The last time I was with him was the worst. We argued again. I refused to do what he wanted, and he called me names, but only after we slept together. I pretended I would see him again, promising that next time I'd do whatever he wanted just to get away, Stacy confessed. I even kissed him goodbye in the parking lot. He scared me. I was terrified and just wanted to be rid of him. He was the only man I've ever been with besides you, and believe me, I've learned my lesson. Then, shortly after, I got the call that you were in the hospital and might die. Imagine my guilt and fear, James. I knew I was wrong. I insisted they test me to see if I could donate a kidney. It was a chance to make amends, to cleanse my soul. It was selfish, too. I know that. I had to do it to feel like I deserved a second chance with the best man I've ever known, Stacy sniffled. It was more for me than for you. Why are you telling me this now, Stacy? I asked. You've kept it inside this long. Why now? Last night, I realized I was losing you, James. I knew it had to be because of my infidelity. If I had any chance to keep you, I had to come clean and let you decide. If you want to divorce me, I'll understand. My giving you the kidney was never meant to force you to stay with me if you didn't want to. I love you far too much to do that. I gave it to you willingly and with love, as partial payment for the wonderful life you've given me so far. There are no strings attached. I made a huge mistake. It's up to you to decide what you want to do, Stacy concluded. Have you stopped seeing the other man? I asked. I swear I haven't seen him alone since that day. Even if you divorce me, I'll never be with him again. He has suggested that we sleep together again, but I've made it very clear that it will never happen. This was news to me. That asshole still wanted my wife after she broke up with him. That wasn't going to fly. I reached over and picked up the phone by the bed. I dialed the 7 digits I had memorized and waited. Stacy looked at me, trying to guess my intentions, but it was clear she had no idea. Hello, Mrs. Taylor. This is James Mitchell. I'm doing well, thank you. I'm calling to ask if you could please convince your husband to stop harassing my wife. She has no intention of being with him again, and if this behavior continues, I might be forced to take drastic measures. I'm still recuperating, but my trigger finger is just fine. Please relay this message to him. Goodbye. Stacy's face turned crimson as her lips and hands trembled. It took her a few moments to gather herself. You knew about him. No wonder you're not interested in me. How did you find out, and when? I saw you at the motel, room 108, on the day of the accident. I was on my way home to confront you when I got hit by that reckless kid. If he'd observed the speed limit, we'd probably be divorced by now, I admitted. I am so sorry, James. I deserve whatever you decide. I can't imagine how hard this has been for you. When you needed me most, I only added to your pain. I'm a terrible person. I'll pack and be gone by noon, James. I never intended to hurt you, but I did exactly that. You deserve so much better. I'm truly ashamed. I'll start packing now, Stacy said, her voice heavy with regret. Stacy, if I give you another chance, do you think you could be ready for a more adventurous relationship with me? I asked. James, if you stay with me, I'll do anything you desire. I swear I'll be the best lover you can imagine, and only for you. I'll do anything, Stacy promised through her tears. Give your 2-week notice at work today, Stacy. I can't have you in the same building as that scumbag, or I'll end up in jail. Start looking for a new job immediately. Part-time would be fine. You might need the extra time to think of ways to make this up to me. I'm not thrilled about all this, but I'm carrying your kidney, and you still seem to have my heart, god damn it. I complained. We'll work through the rest, but your offer does sound very tempting. I arrived late to work that day. Stacy cried and clung to me for a long time. I still don't know if I made the right choice, but most of the time, I feel pretty good about it. You can't imagine the sense of debt you feel to someone who saved your life. It took me a long time to fully forgive Stacy, though. She truly satisfies me now, and otherwise, she's always been a wonderful wife. I just wonder why we have to go through so much pain to finally find happiness. Thank you for watching this video to the end. If you liked it, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you soon.